Man once walked on the moon, but he hasn't been back in nearly 50 years. Why? Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. The moon, sponsored by MOVA Globes. This episode, not the moon itself. 50 years ago, on July 20th, 1969, Americans first landed on the moon in a NASA mission known as Apollo 11.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Unless, of course, you believe Stanley Kubrick faked the whole thing and The Shining was his confession. Over the next 3.5 years, America's NASA space program achieved 5 more successful moon landings. And then, we stopped. That's it. 1972 was the last time a human landed on the moon. So, what on earth happened? Well, for starters, a lot of Americans simply lost interest after the first one. When Apollo 11 first landed on the moon, it had a TV rating of 93 out of 100, which raises the question, what were the other 7% of people watching? Beverly Hillbillies? As many as 150 million Americans were watching as Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin became the first humans to set foot on the moon. The 3 big American TV networks plus 4 radio stations pooled resources to transmit the historic event. Combined, they spent $13 million, or close to $100 million in today's money, for that one broadcast. But by later missions, the TV viewership had dropped significantly. You've heard of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin from Apollo 11, but have you heard of John Young and Charles Duke from Apollo 16? In 1972, they spent nearly 3 days on the moon and drove this awesome lunar rover, and Americans barely tuned in to watch. Although I assume that's in part due to those extended Beverly Hillbillies marathons. Now, if you put the Beverly Hillbillies on the moon, that would get ratings. Of course, the Apollo missions weren't about TV ratings. They were about politics. Do you think the US government spent $25 billion just to produce television entertainment? Or even more ludicrous, to produce science? Come on, it was to beat the Soviet Union. And we did it. We got humans to the moon first and whooped their Soviet butts. America. But after 6 rounds of Soviet butt whooping and waning public interest, Congress lost interest in funding NASA at such extraordinary levels. There's only so many Stanley Kubrick films you can watch before you can't stand it anymore. Which is a statement totally unrelated to the moon. At its peak, NASA took up more than 4% of the federal budget. But there were other priorities Congress wanted to throw money at, like losing the Vietnam War. So by the early 70s, Congress reduced NASA's funding to below 1% of the federal budget. And they told NASA to stop those silly manned moon missions, and instead focus on Skylab, America's first Earth-orbiting space station, which eventually led to the International Space Station. But the real reason we didn't go back to the moon wasn't the cost. It was aliens. We discovered aliens on the moon, and they were very aggressive and... Wait, what's that, Shelley? Transformers wasn't a documentary. Well, I guess I'm sort of relieved. Especially since America's nearly 50 years of not going to the moon is about to be reversed. In December 2017, Trump announced the revitalization of NASA's manned moon missions. He called it Space Policy Directive 1.
This time, we will not only plant our flag and leave our footprint, we will establish a foundation for an eventual mission to Mars and perhaps someday to many worlds beyond.
Basically, Trump wants NASA to build a moon colony, and hopefully a bouncy castle, because that would be awesome in low gravity. For science. It's for science. Speaking of science, the next group of astronauts could have the fun job of collecting the 96 bags of human waste left behind by the 6 Apollo missions to see if any forms of life survived. America's new manned lunar program is being dubbed Artemis. In Greek mythology, Artemis is the moon goddess and the twin sister of Apollo. Artemis will include not only a base on the lunar surface, but also a space station that orbits the moon. It's called the Lunar Orbital Platform Gateway. It will help with getting equipment on and off the moon, as well as future launches to Mars, of which the moon is a part. The first piece of the Gateway's 55-ton outpost is currently scheduled to lift off in 2022. And if everything works out, NASA astronauts could set foot on the moon before the end of the 2020s. Hopefully, they'll remember how to make it more TV friendly. And this episode has been sponsored by MOVA globes. You too can get one of these cool limited edition Apollo moon globes. It has all the awesome features of a regular MOVA globe. It rotates on its own without batteries or cords, powered by ambient light. Plus, it features the 6 Apollo landing sites. Order now while supplies last, or check out one of MOVA's other cool globe designs. And when you buy a MOVA globe, you'll also be supporting your favorite show about America. That stars me, Chris Chappell. So, click the link below. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thanks for watching America Uncovered.